Hello dear learners, welcome to my channel Creative Learners. Today we are going to start with lesson 2 of 10th class from book First Flight, Nelson Mandela Long Walk to Freedom, written by Nelson Rohilhala Mandela. This lesson has been taken from the autobiography of Nelson Mandela, Long Walk to Freedom. He was a South African leader. He greatly struggled for freedom to his people. He struggled against the racial discrimination between whites and blacks. You can see this highlighted word apartheid. Actually, it's a political system that separates people according to their race, or it was a former policy of segregation. In South Africa, this was practiced by white rulers, and under this policy, whites and blacks were kept separate from each other. They were kept in or out of certain areas. There were separate system of education for blacks and whites. Blacks were discriminated. They were ill-treated. So they bitterly, strongly opposed this system of apartheid, system of racial discrimination. So who came to help them? Who led them in the struggle of racial discrimination? Who became a hero? That is Nelson Mandela. Have you heard of Nelson Mandela and his African National Congress? Spent a lifetime fighting against apartheid. Mandela had to spend 30 years in prison, and finally democratic elections were held in South Africa in 1994, and Mandela became the first black president of a new nation. In this extract from his autobiography, the biography of a person narrated by himself or herself, Long Walk to Freedom, Mandela speaks about a historic occasion. What's this historic occasion? The inauguration. Can you guess what the occasion might be? Yes. Check your guess with this news item from the BBC of 10th May 1994. Mandela becomes South Africa's first black president. Mr. Mandela's African National Congress Party won 252 of the 400 seats in the first democratic elections of South Africa's history. And after that, an inauguration ceremony took place in the Union Buildings Amphitheatre. Amphitheatre is a very large open stadium, a building without a roof with many rows of seats rising in steps. Where it is? In Pretoria today. We are talking about Pretoria, which is the executive capital of South Africa. Bloemfontein is the judiciary capital of South Africa, and Cape Town is the legislative capital of South Africa. So it was attended by politicians and dignitaries from more than 140 countries around the world. And Nelson Mandela said in his address that never again will this beautiful land experience the oppression of one by another. Oppression means unjust or cruel exercise of authority or power. Jubilant scenes on the streets means people were extremely happy, and they were on the streets of Pretoria, and it was followed by blacks, whites and coloreds all celebrated together. More than 1 lakh South African men and women of children of all races sang and danced with joy. Next is an activity. This is an exercise to match. A rainbow gathering of different colors and nations means a beautiful coming together of various peoples like the colors in a rainbow. The seat of white supremacy means the center of racial superiority. Be overwhelmed with a sense of history means feel deeply emotional, remembering and understanding all the past events that have led up to the moment. Resilience that defies the imagination means a great ability, almost unimaginable, to remain unchanged by suffering. A glimmer of humanity means a sign of human feeling. A twilight existence means a half-secret life, like a life lived in the fading light between sunset and darkness. Let's start with the reading of the lesson. 10th May dawned bright and clear. It was 10th May and it was a very bright and clear day. For the past few days, I here refer to Nelson Mandela, he had been very pleasantly, very nicely besieged means surrounded closely by dignitaries. Dignitaries here means one who possesses exalted rank or holds a position of dignity or honor, and world leaders who were coming to pay their respects before the inauguration. So he was surrounded by the world leaders and dignitaries. The inauguration would be the largest gathering ever of international leaders on South African soil. So all these international leaders, they gathered there in this union buildings in Pretoria to show their support to the newly elected government of South Africa. The ceremonies took place in the lovely sandstone amphitheatre. This is the sandstone amphitheatre formed by the union buildings in Pretoria. For decades, for a long time, this had been the seat of white supremacy, and now it was a site of a rainbow gathering. As we can see, people from all over the world, from different nations, white and black, they all gathered there to pay their respect to this democratic government. So that has been described as a site of a rainbow gathering of different colors and nations. For what they had assembled? For the installation of South Africa's first democratic non-racial government. On that lovely autumn day, I was accompanied by my daughter Zinani. I here refer to Nelson Mandela. He was with his daughter Zinani. And on the podium, here on the stage, Mr. D. Clark was first sworn in as second deputy president. Then Thabo Mbeki was sworn in as first deputy president. When it was my turn, I pledged, means Nelson Mandela pledged. He promised to obey and uphold means support the constitution. He promised to support the constitution and to devote. Devote means dedicate himself to the well-being of the republic and its people. To the assembled guest and watching world, he said, Nelson Mandela said, today all of us do, by our presence here, means in everybody's presence, we confer, we give glory and hope to newborn liberty. Confer means give, glory means high honor. Out of the experience of an extraordinary human disaster. Yes, why? Extraordinary human disaster. We had heard about natural disasters like earthquake, landsliding. But why it has been referred here human disaster? Because this is created by human beings. As South Africa remained under the white rule for more than 300 years, the blacks, they were treated as criminals and they were forced to live separately from the whites. So that's why Mandela calls it a extraordinary human disaster that lasted too long. Means for a long period of time, blacks of South Africa suffered. Must be born a society of which all humanity will be proud. Means after facing such a human disaster, such a society will take place of which all humanity will feel proud of. We who were outlaws not so long ago. Outlaws means a person excluded from the benefit or protection of the laws. The blacks of South Africa have been called outlaws because they were segregated like criminals under the policy of apartheid. They were considered as outlaws not so long ago, have today been given the rare privilege. Rare privilege means honor to be host to the nations of the world on our own soil. So those who were considered outlaws, they had been given rare honor to be host to the nations of the world. We thank all of our distinguished means well-known, renowned, international guests for having come to take possession with the people of our country of what is after all a common victory for justice, for peace, for human dignity. Nelson Mandela thanked all the international guests for having come to support them for a common victory that was a victory for justice, for peace, for human dignity. We have at last achieved our political emancipation. Emancipation means political freedom, freedom without any restriction. We pledge ourselves, we promised ourselves to liberate all our people from the continuous bondage of poverty, sufferings, deprivation, gender and other discrimination. Never, never, never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another. So this will never happen again. The sun shall never set on so glorious a human achievement. The blacks of South Africa fought a long battle against the white rule, and on 10th May 1994, a democratic government was formed in the country and they had their first black president. So Mandela calls it a glorious human achievement. Let freedom reign. God bless Africa. Dear learners, the answers to the oral comprehension check also is written down below. You can read for your convenience. First one is, where did the ceremony take place? Can you name any public buildings in India that are made of sandstone? The ceremonies took place in the sandstone amphitheatre formed by the Union Buildings in Pretoria. Red Fort, Jama Masjid, Parliament House are some of the buildings made up of sandstone. Can you say how 10th May is an autumn day in South Africa? Mandela called 10th May that lovely autumn day, as this day saw the fall of a system of government based on race and creed. Just as the trees shed their old leaves in autumn, so were the oppressive policies practiced in the South Africa fell down, making room for fresh democratic government. Next is, at the beginning of his speech, Mandela mentions an extraordinary human disaster. What does he mean by this? What is a glorious human achievement he speaks of at the end? The British rulers of South Africa followed the policy of apartheid. The blacks were not allowed to visit the places reserved for the whites. They had to live in separate colonies. Their children had to go to separate schools. Thus, the blacks had to face terrible humiliation all through their life. Mandela calls it an extraordinary human disaster. The blacks had to fight a long and bitter struggle against it. At last, in May 1994, there were free and democratic elections. Mandela became the first black president of a democratic, non-racial government. Mandela calls it so glorious a human achievement. Next is, what does Mandela thank the international leaders for? He thanks the international leaders for having come to grace the occasion of the inauguration of the black government. Next, what ideals does he set out for the future of South Africa? He sets out the ideals of liberating his people from the bondage of poverty, discrimination, and deprivation. The rest of the part will do under the second part. The link of that video will be given in the description. And if you like this video, please share and subscribe and hit the bell icon for the notifications. Thank you.